Josh Hawley, a Republican senator from Missouri, happened to win the lottery and got this whistleblower from Facebook to send him a screenshot allegedly detailing, and I'm not sure how much details there, but allegedly detailing the inner workings of Facebook and how it collects information and shares it and does all kinds of nefarious things, which I really couldn't figure out what was wrong if this thing even exists. This whole thing was confusing. In fact, after these series of questions, I got on the internet and I started looking it up and trying to see what I could find about it. And of course, you can't find anything. All you can find are Josh Hawley's claims that a whistleblower sent him a screenshot and perhaps a bullet list of what he was looking at, because you really can't tell from what you're looking at the things that Josh Hawley claims that this Centra thing does. I didn't even know how to spell it. I couldn't even tell you how to spell it. It came up in the closed captioning as Centra, like a Nissan Sentra, and then it comes up in a BBC article as Centra, like Centra, like Central without the L. It just seems really kind of, I don't know. Given the whistleblowers that the Republicans have dug up in the last several weeks and how they've completely flipped 2 seconds later, or what they're whistleblowing doesn't really. What do you whistle? It's not a whistle. You're just blowing. So let's listen to this and try to figure out what the hell's going on.
Let everybody take note that Mr. Zuckerberg has now repeatedly refused to provide information that he knows that he has and has now acknowledged that he has, that Tasks has under oath.
Okay, everyone can take notes of that, but the record will reflect that Mark Zuckerberg did try to answer your non sequiturs about things that may or may not exist. And he did say that he would supply you with the lists if he has that information to give you. He's not even sure if the information you asked exists. So he has to get back to people. He'll follow up. That could have been the place card for Mark Zuckerberg's Zoom call. I'll follow up. Because that's pretty much all there was just follow up and follow up. Is he going to subpoena? Is Josh Hawley going to have the Senate subpoena Mark Zuckerberg for this? No, because Mark Zuckerberg's not holding anything back. He's going to give them what the information they need. He's not hiding anything, really. I don't think that he is really hiding anything. I think that he's sincerely trying to do his best. But the problem isn't Facebook. The problem isn't Twitter or YouTube. It isn't the social platforms. The problem is the people using them. If we could think more critically for ourselves, we wouldn't have to have algorithms doing that for us. Now would we? So let's look at this Centra thing and try to figure out, is it a real thing? I don't know.
Let me switch to a different topic. Mr. Zuckerberg, tell me about Centra. What is the Facebook internal tool called Centra?
Senator, I'm not aware of any tool with that name.
Yeah, I believe I think he's telling the truth. I don't think it exists. I think if it exists, it's a one-off. It's something that somebody has on their own that they may have done on their own to plug into Facebook's backend so that they could check things off their task lists. There's ways that you can do that. I mean, people make apps for Facebook, so there's this integrative process where you can kind of share things. And this happened with Cambridge Analytica, which is the reason why we're all here today in these hearings, because we've seen what data harvesting and sharing data and how that can be used to manipulate people. But it didn't manipulate me. I didn't have a hard time. My sister didn't have a hard time with it. She wasn't being manipulated. She could see that it was bullcrap. It's because we're both critical thinkers. We can both think for ourselves. We don't just digest the food that's given to us at the end of some phantom fork, at the end of some phantom arm. I like to know who's feeding me and what they're feeding me. And so does my sister, and so does a lot of my family members, thank God. But some of them aren't critical thinkers, and they're the ones that I worry about. So we really have to up our game there. And we're not going to up our game by having Facebook do everything for us, or Twitter do everything for us, or YouTube, or even the Senate do everything. You want to do something for us? Increase funding on education. Extend the time that people have to go to school, extend that longer, because we have to learn more in the same amount of time. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic now. It's reading, writing, arithmetic, and about 50 other things that we have to know. And we have to cram that all into 12 years? Are you kidding me? So we definitely need to add a few more years to the end, just so people will have some idea what's going on, so they don't fall for Josh Hawley's hypocritical bullcrap. He's the biggest hypocrite in the room right now. He has the nerve to open this conversation with robber barons, and he's the biggest shill there ever was. He's all for the military-industrial complex. He's for religious fanaticism. He's for destroying the environment because he's a shill for the energy industry. Just look at his voting record. And he's from Missouri. You think from Missouri that you'd like the environment, because there's a lot of people in Missouri, especially southern Missouri, that really love the environment. That's how they make their living. So for him to take a crap all over it and favor big oil, look at his record. He voted for the swamp that's in the executive branch right now. Every one of those people, you look at their record, their history, and it's like, what is this person doing in the Department of Education? What is this person doing in the Department of Energy? What is this person doing in the Department of Defense? I'll tell you what they're doing. They're making money for their corporate overlords, and Josh Hawley is exactly one of them. You look at his voting record, and it's just right along with the gang, just right along with it. And he's got the nerve to act like he cares about privacy. I'm sure you cared about it when you agreed to continue with the security industry's invasion of our privacy. The NSA, the FBI, the CIA. Hell, you can't say anything or text anything online without worrying if somebody's going to kick your door in later on. And Josh Hawley voted for that. So tell us about how Facebook is taking our privacy away.
Well, Matt, let me see if this refreshes your memory. There's a demonstrative now over my shoulder. Centra is a
Demonstrative, that must have been on his word of the day calendar.
tool that Facebook uses to track its users, not just on Facebook, but across the entire internet. Centra tracks different profiles that a user visits, their message recipients, their linked accounts, the pages they visit around the web that have Facebook buttons. Centra also uses behavioral data to monitor users' accounts, even if those accounts are registered under a different name. And you can see a shot here, screenshot provided to us of the Centra platform. We blocked out the user's name in the interest of privacy, although you can see this individual's birth date and age, when they first started using Facebook, their last login, as well as all manner of trackings. How many different devices have they used to access Facebook? How many different accounts are associated with their name? What accounts have they visited?
I wonder if they blacked out Josh Hawley's name and then the whistleblower sent the screenshot to Josh Hawley. It's like, yeah, we've been tracking everything you're doing.
What photos have they tagged? And on and on and on. Mr. Zuckerberg, how many accounts in the United States have been subject to review and shut down through Centra?
I bet he knows that answer right off the top of his head.
Senator, I do not know because I'm not actually familiar with the name of that tool. I'm sure that we have tools that help us with our platform and community integrity.
And see, that's the whole non-point of this question of the Centra tool. It's a secret whistleblower tool. And Mark Zuckerberg just admits, I'm sure we have tools that do that because that's what we do. That in order to do what you want us to do, I mean, they tell Facebook do this, and then when Facebook has the tools to do that, they're like, do you have the tools that do that? Why do you have those tools?
Work. But I am not familiar with that name.
Do you have a tool that does exactly what I've described and that you can see here over my shoulder? Or are you saying that that doesn't exist?
Senator, I'm saying that I'm not familiar with it.
I'll say it doesn't exist. I'm just going to go on the record and say it probably doesn't exist. I'm going to say it's not real. I'm going to be the first one to call it right now. Let's see, 3 or 4 months from now, I'm going to replay this video and I'm going to let you know whether I'm right or wrong. I'm going to say it's total bullshit. That's a dog shit claim. It came, a Republican senator from Missouri just happens to get a screenshot from a whistleblower at Facebook about software that does a lot of what Facebook already says. When I plug in what Centra does, I get another thing on Facebook. I get something different. They're off friendship something, or they're off Facebook something. it seemed like it does a lot of the same thing, and you can opt out of it. I'm not sure where this questioning is going, other than just to prime his audience that doesn't understand how these things work.
And that I'd be happy to follow up and get you and your team the information that you would like on this. But I'm limited in what I can, what I'm familiar with and can share today.
It's always amazing to me, Mr. Chairman, how many people before this committee suddenly develop amnesia. Maybe it is something about the air in the room.
Oh my God! Let the record show. Something in the room.
Ask you this: when a Facebook employee accesses a user's private information, like their private messages or their personally identifiable data, is a record made of that, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Sorry, Senator, could you repeat that?
Is a record made of any time a Facebook employee accesses a user's private information, personally identifiable information, for example, messages? Is a record made any time a Facebook employee does that?
Senator, I believe so.
Does it trigger an audit?
Senator, I think sometimes it may.
How many?
Think about that in practical terms. Does every time somebody, the employees have a job to do, and not all of those are going to pan out to be a bad thing. It's be like, okay, that's nothing, and then they just back out and they go on to the next thing. So of course there's going to be queries that don't go anywhere. But if they trigger audits every time they do queries on people, nothing's ever going to get done. So just from a practical perspective, that's I can't even tell where there would be an instance where maybe if you had certain people that were users, like high profile people that are users, you might want to audit those on a regular basis. But what would be the circumstances that a person would be looking at stuff to the point where it would trigger a threshold to be audited? You'd either have to look at them all or look at none of them. Just from a practical standpoint, do you just go to the employee and be like, what have you looked at today? Why? Just survey them all each day? I'd be curious to find out how that actually works. It seems like it's a lot to chew.
Audits have been conducted.
Senator, I do not know the exact number of audits.
Can you give me a list?
Senator, we can follow up on that to see what would be useful here.
Will you?
I could just see Mark Zuckerberg before this Senate hearing. He has a list of notes with different statistics and different answers on it, and he's memorizing them all like he's taking a test for an exam or something. He doesn't have that information right there. Who would? I mean, you could probably ask the senator right now where his car keys are, and he couldn't tell you.
Mr. Chairman, will you commit to giving us a list of the number of times Facebook employees have accessed users' personal account information without their knowledge? Yes or no?
Senator, we should follow up on what would be useful here. It is, of course, in the operations of the company, if someone reports something, sometimes necessary for people at the company to go review and understand the context around what is happening when someone reports something. So this is fairly frequent and is a matter of course. We do have security systems that can detect anomalous patterns to flag, but we should follow up in more detail on what you're interested in.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say in closing that what we have here is clear evidence of coordination between Twitter, Google, and Facebook. Mr. Zuckerberg knows he has the tools to track this, but he either doesn't remember or won't commit to letting us see it. We have evidence of Facebook tracking its own users all across the web. Mr. Zuckerberg won't answer questions about it, can't remember the name, isn't sure if the tool is deployed in this way, and won't commit to giving us basic information. I
think Josh Hawley had that statement prepared well in advance of it being made. That's the point he was trying to make. That's the reason why he asked the non sequiturs, the vague questions, wanted information that that Mark Zuckerberg's not going to be able to produce on demand. And then when Mark Zuckerberg does try to comply and says he's going to give you the information, you turn around and says that he didn't comply, that he's being adversarial, that he's not going to supply, he won't commit this and that. no, everybody watched the same thing, and that's not what happened. And I don't know what you're doing, but it's a bad job. And the people of Missouri, you need to find a different senator, because this one sucks.